What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the 5280 podcast on the MHRT network. I'm joined, as always, by my friends, friend and Cam, Glenn Hauser, and then fresh from his begging and pleading tour, Cameron Parker. How are we doing, my friends?
We're doing well.
Yeah, doing good. Just you got the late Nuggets game at 8:00, and just pray that it doesn't end at 1.
We'll see. But yeah, we have a very special guest with us today. We always love it when we can have a guest on the show. He's the host of the Denver Broncos Syndicate. You can find him on Twitter at Gage Madrid NFL. Ladies and gentlemen, Gage Madrid.
What's up, guys?
Woo! I don't have my other hand. I'll do this and shake the whole table. Gage!
Giving me the Pat McAfee style intro, man. Love it. Thanks for having me on, guys.
At least he's not wearing a tank top, so we got that going for us.
Listen, to each their own, though. I mean, like, if you want to, just roll up them sleeves. Just get
But see, that's not a tank top. You're just rolling up your sleeve.
How dare you think that you can define what a tank top is?
I mean, I can go put one on.
So listen, obviously the big news coming out of the Denver Broncos, Kareem Jackson is back for at least this year. Gage, what are you thinking about the comeback of Kareem Jackson?
I definitely like it. I don't love it, but I like it. K-Jack can provide that steady veteran presence that I feel like we really needed in our secondary. He's got some familiarity with Vance Joseph from their time together in Houston. Although VJ's scheme has evolved from his time in Cincinnati, Miami, Houston, and Arizona, but still, man, that level of familiarity is certainly huge, and the camaraderie level in the locker room, that was a key factor. But also, I know they really like Caden Stearns alongside Justin Simmons at the safety position. But he is coming off of a very significant hip injury, and JL Skinner, kind of a similar situation. He's coming off of, I believe it's a torn pec or something along those lines. Right. So that may be kind of a out for half the season kind of injury. So they really needed somebody to have some insurance, veteran insurance, if nothing else, and that's what K-Jack can provide. And also, he's just a threat around the line of scrimmage as a hard-hitting safety. People fear what he brings in the run game and what he brings as a blitzer along the line. So although we have a really good blitzing nickel in K1 Williams, maybe in dime packages when there's a 6 DB on the field, K-Jack could be that 6 DB and essentially have 2 blitzing threats on each side in K-Jack and K1.
And the price tag wasn't too bad either.
I missed it. What was it?
2.6.
Okay, yeah, I was guesstimating around 3 or 4, so I was trying to get my video out quick, and I had missed what the financial terms were. So that sounds about right for a safety of his age. Obviously, with the longevity of his career entering his age 35 season, he's not got the speed and range that he once had, but still, he's a very valuable player for this defense.
Is he that old? I thought he was like 31, 32.
No.
He's 35?
Yeah.
I say that, but I'm older than that. I'm just saying.
But you're also not tackling people.
Yeah.
Well, not anybody bigger than my kids.
But yeah, and I'm with you guys. I will say it is a little bit of a slight curveball because I mean, Glenn, we were speaking with Broncos Avenue, about it on 5280 we were thinking, maybe the JL Skinner selection would shut the door of Kareem Jackson without saying it, like saying the fact that they were not going to bring him back. But, there was the curveball. I mean, they decided to bring him back. And, I think the other side of this is, yes, that, those players that you mentioned, Stearns and Skinner, do have injury concerns like coming into this league or into the season. But also the team in general is injury riddled. And so the amount of bodies that you can put into that room is so necessary. And it's a flexible position to where he's played corner and he's played safety. So any capable bodies that you can have within that room is vastly needed for sure.
Yeah,
100%.
now, Gage, one of the things that I've kind of seen going around Twitter when we're talking about draft picks, right? You've got, what do we get, five draft picks in the draft?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like everyone is expecting for these draft picks to come in and either start or have a very significant role on the team. And like, are we overvaluing the draft picks a little bit? I mean, we're looking at 3rd, 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks, right? Like,
Sure.
should we be expecting them to come in and start?
I mean, obviously, there's a couple that you figure are going to have significant roles when you think of guys like Marvin Mims and Drew Sanders. I mean, Drew Sanders is going to have to split reps with guys such as Josie Jewell and even potentially Jonas Griffith. I feel like Alex Singleton, with the amount of money that he received, his position is pretty much set there at the off-ball linebacker position. But obviously, I still feel like, given the fact that they really liked him enough to get him in the 2nd round, you don't see linebackers go that high as often anymore. So he's a guy that definitely should see some significant playing time in his rookie season. And given the fact that KJ Hamler is coming off of his torn pec as well, man, Marvin Mims should fill that speedy slot receiving threat that threatens to take the top off of the defense at any given time. So those are some guys who definitely should see some extended action in their rookie year. And another guy that I look at as well, of course, is Riley Moss. I mean, they're still trying to figure out that second boundary corner spot alongside Kareem Jackson. They're kind of hoping that Damari Mathis can continue his rise up from his rookie season. But at the same time, man, if Sean Payton likes a DB enough to go up and trade him, that clearly means something.
What do you think of the Mims pick? Were you surprised they went wide receiver with the first choice, or what was your opinion of that?
It caught me off guard. It definitely caught me off guard. I was not anticipating that they were going to go wide receiver with their top pick. When they traded up, I thought it was maybe going to be for a center. I can't recall. Was John Michael? John Michael Schmitz had gone off the board by that point. But still, I was figuring it was maybe going to be for interior offensive line or maybe defensive line. But still, they clearly feel like they can use Marvin Mims in an extended role. And as well, he provides competition in the return game. They brought in Tremon Smith to be a kick returner, but they're still kind of trying to figure things out a little bit at punt returner. Montrell Washington, I'll take it or leave it with what we get from him. But at this point, I feel like Marvin Mims, they're going to find ways to use him this season.
Yeah, and I think what kind of adds the intrigue of it all is just the players that you were able to get tremendous value for. Like J.L. Skinner, like he really should not have been there where he was taken. And so you wonder if a player like that is going to kind of carve out his own role. And I should say that between he and Drew Sanders, like those are two players that probably could carve, some roles like early on in the season. And then maybe not start, but you do wonder about, Alex Forsyth, and so, I mean, a 7th rounder center, obviously, but like he's a guy that you could develop, over the course of, midway through the season or something like that. And maybe he does take over for Lloyd Cushenberry if Cushenberry does struggle.
Absolutely. And that was something I was going to bring up, is like the positions that stick out like a sore thumb to me as positions of need for this team post-draft, and center is obviously still one of them. Lloyd Cushenberry, I don't know what level of confidence you guys have in him this season, but my level of confidence in him is low given his injury concerns from last season, as well as the fact that even after he got healthy, they elected not to activate him. His pass protection issues, he gets walked back into the lap of the quarterback way too often. I have some significant concerns about Lloyd Cushenberry. I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on the center position for the Denver Broncos.
Listen, I think it was pretty well established that we all were pretty excited about the potential of keeping Glasgow at center, and then that obviously didn't work out. So I'm not a huge Cushenberry fan, but at the same time, like, they have to be seeing something if he's still there, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And what do you think the impact of the new signees for the offensive line will have on Lloyd? Do you think they'll be able to help him be more successful at center?
I mean, I'd like to hope so, but at the same time, center's one of the most cerebral positions on the offensive line. You're the quarterback of the offensive line. You're the one who's directing the protection. You're the one who's the main communicator on the offensive line. You're identifying the fronts. So, yes, I do feel like someone like Ben Powers next to him will help. And obviously he's got that continuity and familiarity with Quinn Miners on the other side of him. But at the same time, it's on Lloyd Cushenberry himself to step up. And really the cerebral part of his game hasn't been the biggest issue so much as it is physicality and not having play strength for me.
Yeah, I was kind of like thinking about it, and I don't, because the cerebral part was something that was maybe one of his biggest pluses coming into the draft. And one of the reasons why I was a little bit excited about him, but over the course of what you've seen from him and his performance and his play on the field, it's just been such a disappointment. And so when you kind of look at what he was able to do, he also was maybe not necessarily in a system that might not have been favorable for him, and so I think that that's like another part of this is like, if you go to maybe that wide zone, that it certainly seems like maybe that's what the Broncos are leaning toward. Maybe that's kind of where we see a little bit more of what, the Cushenberry that we think we were trying to get, when he was certainly drafted. Because I think that people forget that Joe Burrow and I think it was even Joe Brady were pretty complimentary of Cushenberry in, within that offense and that offensive line. And so, to kind of not see that, with the kind of high powered offense that we're come to seeing with Justin Jefferson and, Jamar Chase. I mean, so to not necessarily see that, it's been a little bit frustrating.
Absolutely.
So Avatar wants to know if maybe Wattenberg would have a chance to maybe leapfrog Cushenberry. We didn't hear a lot from Wattenberg last year. Would it be Wattenberg before Forsythe or Forsythe before Wattenberg?
So I actually have the Denver Broncos unofficial depth chart from our lads. And obviously they're not affiliated with the team, but right now they actually have Wattenberg ahead of Forsythe. Okay. I feel like since Wattenberg is the incumbent, they'll give him a chance. But at the same time, he was a pick from the prior regime, and his play last season left a lot to be desired. So, yeah, and that's putting it very nicely. So I think they'll give Wattenberg a chance. But since Alex Forsythe was a pick of this regime, and here's my cat saying hello, I do feel like Forsythe will probably win that competition. And then also we still have Kyle Fuller in the mix, the other Kyle Fuller. He's worked with Russell Wilson before in Seattle. He started, I want to say, like 8 or 9 games for the Seahawks back in 2021. Right. So there's that familiarity level as well. So I wouldn't count him out also at center. It's going to be a really interesting competition as we enter training camp at that position.
Why is no one talking about Kyle Fuller? Because like you mentioned him, like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about him.
Yeah.
That's wild because they do have that experience together. That's unusual that he's kind of the forgotten man at that position right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, I was
distracted there, Mike.
I was thinking, well, it's like Gage is like, I've got the unofficial depth chart, and I'm like, he's pulling up depth charts, and I'm at the store like, do I have enough Mountain Dew for the show?
Hey man, that is also a very important question.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a question for you in regards to the offensive line. We obviously are going different directions in most of the positions that we have. We're still waiting to see what happens with Cushenberry. You've got Bowles and Miners. Other than that, you've got pretty much a new right side. Do we bring back Dalton Reisner?
Man, I made a video about this. I want to say it was just before the draft. And a lot of members of Broncos country were highly in favor of bringing back Dalton Reisner, but there were a few that were kind of in the same camp that I am, that I feel like that ship has sailed. Reisner, I feel like, is still a starting caliber offensive lineman in the NFL, but he's got his issues, especially picking up stunts. I feel like that's one of the things that really gets him. You hit him with a stunt, and it's pretty much all over with. So right now, I feel like he's kind of holding out because he's not getting the right amount of money that he feels like he deserves. So if the Denver Broncos come to him and offer him that kind of money, maybe. But given the fact that he's got that little sideline spurt with Brett Rippon, who's granted is not here anymore. I don't know, man. I've been going back and forth on this one. I'm kind of on the fence. I can see an argument for it, and I can see an argument against it.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things too, is that I thought that once the draft came to pass, that he would then join a team, that maybe teams were saying, let's see how things pan out. We'll keep discussions going after that. We're a week and a half after that draft has ended, and he's still out there. I mean, that is, I don't know if someone told him that he should be making this type of money, and he's been holding out for that. And even if he's got another offers, I've not heard of any. But it is surprising that someone that has been a starter for the last 4 years for an NFL offensive line is still available.
Absolutely, man. And I mean, say what you want about his issues, he's still very much a starting caliber offensive lineman in the NFL. And with that position so hard to find competent play at, man, you'd think someone would at least throw him $4 or $5 million. But at this point, maybe he doesn't want to take it. I don't know.
Yeah, and also it could have just been he and I actually should say his agent, and you were talking about this, Glenn, but it's like maybe they just misjudged the market. Like, because I mean, maybe they were seeking that Isaiah Siamalo type of deal, which was like that, 3 and for like 25 or something like that, 8 per, and he's not getting that, and so you wonder if it's like almost going to be moving toward that prove it deal, which, I mean, good for him. I mean, that's kind of like what it probably is going to end up being if he does end up getting something, is that 1 year prove it deal. The position that I was kind of intrigued with, Gage, was I was a little bit surprised that they didn't draft a running back. I was a little bit surprised. That they didn't take a running back. And I know that Jeremy Fowler put out a thing out saying that the Broncos are a team to keep an eye with Kareem Hunt. Is that someone that you kind of yourself have your eyes on, or is there someone else maybe that kind of catches your eye in free agency, or are you perfectly fine with Javonte Williams and Samaje P. Ryan?
So as far as like veteran free agents, Kareem Hunt is probably the best option out there that you wouldn't have to trade for. Obviously, Dalvin Cook is available, but you would have to give up draft capital for him most likely and take on whatever money is left in his deal that the Vikings wouldn't take on. Then Ezekiel Elliott, somebody I want nothing to do with. So given Kareem Hunt's body of work in terms of like veteran free agent running backs, I would be totally interested in those guys. But I feel honestly that they really like Jaleel McLaughlin, the undrafted free agent running back. What college was he out of again?
Youngstown State.
Youngstown, that's right. He's a guy who I feel like is almost Philip Lindsay with hands. He's explosive. He can burst out a big run at any given time, and he can bring that in the passing game as well, which is something that Philip Lindsay, although not given ample opportunities to, I feel like still struggled to bring that dynamic explosiveness in the passing game as a receiver out of the backfield. So I feel like between Jaleel McLaughlin and Samaje P. Ryan, Tony Jones Jr., and then Javonte with his injury, I don't know what we're really going to get out of him this coming season. Hey, John, I see you in the chat. But with Javonte, I feel like running backs coming off multi-ligament knee injuries probably struggle in their first year. We saw the 2 Ravens running backs, Gus Edwards and first round pick, J.K. Dobbins. They struggled coming out of the gate with their multi-ligament knee injuries, and I worry that it could be the same with Javonte Williams. Same, with Saquon Barkley. So we may be depending pretty heavily on guys like Samaje P. Ryan and Tony Jones Jr. and maybe potentially as well Jaleel McLaughlin and the other undrafted back, Emmanuel Wilson.
McLaughlin's highlights are ridiculous. Big E Bronco actually sent me a highlight package of him. And you mentioned the word burst. I mean, that describes him to a T. I don't think I've ever seen anyone that like busts through a hole faster and then just separates themselves from the pack. If he can have a successful, if he can pick up the playbook and impress these coaches, man, that could be a weapon that we get as an undrafted free agent. That would be phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he's a player that kind of excitement as a running back, like, is going to excite a lot of people in training camp. So like that's a name that's going to be circling on people's like undrafted boards. So like if he makes a huge play in training camp, and especially the fact that we'll be having preseason of people actually playing in preseason. And he might get a decent chunk of that. Like there is that window where he might be able to make the 53-man roster for sure. I guess where I was going to try and go with the Javonte stuff for me, Gage, was like with them not addressing running back though, and Kareem Hunt still there, obviously in free agency. Is it possible? And obviously we don't know about the injury, but is it possible that the Broncos are lending to the possibility that maybe Javonte is coming along, maybe a little bit better than maybe people think? Because at one point it seemed like George Payton was like pretty confident about where the recovery was going. Then at one point, about a couple months later or a month later, he was like, you know what? I'm not so sure anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they're kind of playing the Javonte Williams situation by ear. Once they enter training camp, they're kind of assessing where he's at right now. But given the fact that they didn't address running back in the draft, reading between the lines, that bodes some confidence in Javonte moving forward. But based on the way George Payton was talking, though, it's really interesting to see how that's going to shake out, because George Payton's been a guy who hasn't really said much this past offseason, and kind of leaning into that Sean Payton mantra a little bit of keeping everything in-house. So the team knows obviously where Javonte Williams is, and I think the fact that they didn't address running back in the draft may tell us where they think he's at.
That would be insane. If he comes back that fast, that would be nuts.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, like I think, obviously, I think there's a big consensus that Kareem Hunt is probably the best free agent out there. But I've always been okay with the Broncos going after Zeke. Why are you not a Zeke fan?
He'd be a great center. He'd be a great center.
The question is, Mike, why are you a Zeke fan?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I am, but like out of the options that we have, like why would Zeke not be on the radar? You know what I mean?
Okay, I mean, when I saying I want nothing to do with Zeke is probably a little bit harsh, but we have a back who would fill Zeke's role in Samaje Perine.
Right.
Zeke's that kind of between the 20s back in this stage, after the 20s. He's more of a red zone threat in this stage of his career. Obviously, I believe he had double-digit touchdowns last year, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
That sounds right.
Yeah, and then also, obviously, he brings like a short yardage situation as well. But short yardage and red zone, we already have players who can fill that role in this offense. He doesn't have the burst. He doesn't have the explosiveness, and that's the kind of back that the Denver Broncos need. And that's why I'm really hoping Jaleel McLaughlin can step up and fill that role.
I'm still upset we didn't trade for Jamal Williams. 16 touchdowns last season. 16.
Actually, I think he had 17, Mike. But I was a little surprised the Bengals didn't keep Perine, considering Joe Mixon's off-the-field troubles. We seem to be reading about him on a somewhat regular basis. I mean, they left themselves kind of exposed there. But what was your opinion of that signing?
I do like it, especially again as a short yardage out of the backfield. He said it himself. He's not going to break out an explosive run, but he's going to give you 5 yards here, 4 yards there. On third down, he'll give you good pass protection. That's one of the big elements of his game that I feel like he's going to bring, is a pass protector for Russell Wilson on third down, because that's one thing that the Broncos back struggled with. Latavius Murray was okay at it, but otherwise the Broncos had some issues with pass protection from their running backs last year. And Samaje Perine, that's going to be a really big factor there. So he's going to be the third down back for this Denver Broncos team. And given the fact that Javonte's injury, we don't know what's going on there, he may be the first and second down back for the Broncos as well.
That's actually kind of a nice leading, because I was going to ask about, Latavius, and obviously he goes and signs out with Buffalo, but you obviously with the Zeke conversation, it sort of just kind of lend itself in, the direction that I was going to go, which was, there really was no point in either going after an Ezekiel Elliott or sadly a Latavius Murray, because like that's the same style of running back, if you will. With that towering, big power back, if you will, that also the reliable guy. But his presence in the locker room will certainly be missed. But obviously P. Ryan being the guy that he was in Cincinnati, and obviously Cincinnati lucking into the fact that they drafted Chase Brown from Illinois, was at least going to be nice. But was there at least part of you that was a little bit surprised that Latavius didn't come back?
Yes, given his familiarity with Sean Payton. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. But given his familiarity with Sean Payton and what the Broncos want to do offensively, and given his familiarity with the personnel here in Denver, I thought it made all kinds of sense. But they clearly coveted P. Ryan and they coveted Tony Jones Jr. So that's why they went to go in that direction. I mean, I do know that the relationship between Latavius Murray and the Saints kind of ended on a little bit sour note, so that may have played into it a little bit as well. But I don't know, man. I still feel like it would have made a lot of sense for this team.
Mm-hmm.
Buana wants to know, do you feel the change in Landau make a big difference with the Garcia still as the head? I think I either read that wrong or I don't know. Just based off let's come back early if he does. Either one. Do you think losing Landau is going to make? Yeah. Do you think losing Landau is going to make a big difference with the team?
God, I hope so, man. I mean, clearly there was an issue with strength and conditioning here. It's the NFL. Football's a violent sport. Guys are going to go down, but the amount of soft tissue injuries, the amount of non-contact injuries, these are injuries that should be at a much lower number than what they were for the Denver Broncos over these past several seasons. I mean, last year was just the culmination of it. But really over the past few years, it's been ACL here, Achilles there, hamstring. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, a lot of people out there don't want to blame strength and conditioning, but clearly something is wrong there with recovery and conditioning.
Yeah.
So, Gage, switching gears a little bit, let's talk about you and your career. So how did you get into the media side of the NFL and particularly the Denver Broncos?
I mean, I've followed the team for several years now. I mean, I've been a Broncos fan since the age of 6. I've really started diving into football for the past 8 years, since the age of 15 when we went to the Super Bowl. And so my passion for the game has just grown and grown and grown. I've really become a football nerd. And I've interacted with fellow Broncos fans and members of the media on Twitter in the past, and I felt like, you know what, I kind of want my own platform to be able to give my opinions on what's going on with the team, and I feel like I'd be able to be pretty good at it. So I started making YouTube videos on a separate channel that I currently make them from, and it's through that channel that Derek, the host of the Gridiron Blitz and Detroit Lions Syndicate, found me, and I was one of the inaugural members of the Syndicate network through him. So it's really through the past 8 years that I've found my passion and my love for this game. I've never played football. I've never coached football, but I'm still someone who's really obsessed with the X's and O's and the ins and outs of the game of football. It's one of my it's just a giant game of chess, and I love it so much.
So you were 15 when we won the last Super Bowl?
Yes.
Oh God, my heart hurts.
Or 16, I'm sorry, 16.
Oh geez.
16.
Oh, that doesn't make it any better.
Yeah. No, it doesn't make it any better. I'm sitting here like, oh, maybe he's talking about 98. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. No, I'm only 23.
Oh God.
So what's a favorite video you've made so far on either your own original channel or Denver Broncos Syndicate?
So this one actually does live on the original channel, and it's not even Broncos related. It was kind of a documentary style football. A documentary style football video. They take a lot of time to make, but it was one basically talking about how the Atlanta Falcons were making a massive mistake not starting Desmond Ridder earlier than they did. that's my most popular video that I've ever done, and I just really enjoyed putting that one together, man. Finding the clips for it, writing the script. It was a storytelling style video. So that was probably my favorite video that I've ever done. But Broncos related, I enjoy my film study content.
Mhm.
I've made several Russell Wilson film breakdowns. I've broken down Mike McGlinchey. I've broken down Jarrett Stidham. Film study content is probably my favorite content to make as of right now on the channel. I'm getting ready to dive into that content for our draft picks right now. So really looking forward to it.
Question that I ask every guest that comes on the show. Favorite Broncos player ever?
Peyton fucking.
You can go. That's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. Listen,
Manning,
we tried to be as family friendly as possible, right? And then we had Brandon Perna and Derek Wolf on the show. And
Oh.
went out the window. It's like, all right, never mind.
Yeah.
PFM, man. PFM. Yeah, I'm the same way. My show, because of my co-host, he asked me to be family friendly, but on my other channel, no, it's out the window. It's gone.
We tried. It just, no.
What is your other channel though? You've referenced it, but you haven't mentioned what it is.
It's called Sparkin' Sports NFL. I haven't put out a video on there since like Super Bowl. That's a channel I'm still kind of trying to figure out the direction I want to take, and I'm probably going to take it in the same like film study content, but for the other 31 teams. But on Denver Broncos Syndicate, I do a combination of breaking news coverage, film study content. I do game streams for road games. I attend all of the home games. So for road games, I do game streams and reactions. And during home games this year, I'm hoping to be able to get my laptop over there. They have lockers outside the stadium that I can put my laptop in during the game. And post game, I'm hoping to be able to do like a full-blown live show from the stadium and all that kind of good stuff. So that's the kind of content that we dive into right now on this channel. But I'm still trying to figure out what my other channel, the direction that I'm going to take that into.
So
I'm sorry, Cam. What draft pick are you looking to most forward to breaking down on the film study this year?
Drew Sanders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drew Sanders. Dude's a thumper. Dude's a stud. I'm so looking forward to break him down.
So if you were to explain Broncos Syndicate to to an unknown fan versus say someone that listens to some of the other great podcasts or, streams that are out there, like, Locked On Broncos or some of the other ones that are out there, what's different for Broncos Syndicate versus the others? I know you mentioned some of your film breakdown, but if you're to explain it for like the naked fan, if you will, that doesn't know about Broncos Syndicate, I know, what would you, how would you
talk about
explain
naked people?
Yes, we get naked on Denver Broncos Syndicate.
Right.
No.
God.
So Denver Broncos Syndicate is a fan-driven brand. Same with the whole Syndicate brand. The big thing is our hosts are fans of their respective team above all else. Yes, I am technically a media member and I cover the team, but I can't throw my fandom of the team out the window.
Right.
So our channels are about bringing you coverage of our respective teams, be it breaking news, be it film study, whatever coverage, analysis of the draft, which we recently got into, all that kind of coverage from a fan perspective, not necessarily an outsider's perspective or a media member's perspective who can't be a fan. They have to be unbiased, if you will.
Have you heard any feedback from any players at all?
I have not heard any feedback from players. I've gotten really good feedback from some other media members, but I have not heard anything from players. It'd be really cool to get some players on here pretty soon. I know you guys had Woofy on. That was awesome.
Thank you.
So you talked about how you got into being a fan of the Broncos, how you got into being on Denver Syndicate or Denver Broncos Syndicate and whatnot. Being only 23 and having your whole life ahead of you, as opposed to like me and Cam, who are halfway dead, and then Glenn, who sees the Grim Reaper on several occasions. Where do you want this to eventually end up?
I mean, my goal is to cover the Broncos full time on a full-time basis, be it through YouTube or be it through another network platform. YouTube's probably my quickest way to get there, but my goal is to be able to cover the team full-time and do this for a living. I'm passionate about my team. I already put a ton of hours into this. I'm ready to go, man.
And I told you earlier, it's really obvious that you spend a lot of time on these videos, writing the scripts. Do you have a writer's background, or is that something that just comes naturally to you?
No, just something comes natural. I don't really have a professional background in anything really. I'm just someone who's trying to find my way in life, and I feel like the game of football is what I'm meant to do something related to football, and I feel like this is it.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, coming from someone myself who has never played the game, or, done any sort of like, coaching or anything like that, to kind of see the kind of success that you've been having, it has been pretty remarkable for myself, because it's one that kind of keeps me moving as well, and just chugging along with what we're doing. So, because I think that's the thing is, like, I feel like that's like a misconception a lot of times. Like, like you don't necessarily have to play the game, or even have coached it to know the ins and outs of, the sport. Because like that's going to be like your own, self-taught, of the game, and how you grow, and how you learn things. And so to kind of see that, I feel like has been a nice little growing experience for myself.
100%. And I have to give all the credit in the world to YouTubers out there such as Brett Coleman, Jackson Kruger Sports, Alex Rollins, Sam Gold, QB School. All those guys have really allowed me to learn the ins and outs of the game of football, learn how to break down film, all of that kind of stuff. So it's through individuals like that I've really found my passion for the X's and O's side of the game. So I really have to give those guys almost all the credit for that.
So I've got two big questions going into this season before we start wrapping some stuff up. We have a lot of options here at wide receiver with the Denver Broncos. You've got Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, Marquez Callaway, who's one that they just brought in, Marvin Mims, obviously the draft pick, KJ Hamler. You got Jalen Virgil, Kendall Hinton, Montreal Washington, Brandon Johnson, and then three new ones, Dallas Daniels, Lil Jordan Humphrey, and Taylor Grimes.
That's like smorgasbord.
Most of the names we know. They were on the team. How many wide receivers are they carrying? And are we going to lose a big name receiver before this is all over?
Man, one guy who I feel like may be on the roster bubble and get ready to cover your ears, Broncos country, is Kendall Hinton. I mean, he's a guy from the prior two regimes, and he's a guy who's Hall of Famer, baby, Hall of Fame quarterback. But he's a guy who has shown flashes of good play, but I feel like with all the names above him that currently sit on the depth chart, man, it may be a little bit hard for him to find a spot on this team, maybe practice squad, but he could be a more valuable resource on another team's active roster. As far as the number of wide receivers that we keep, I mean, obviously Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, Marvin Mims, those guys all figure to be locks for this team. KJ Hamler, that's going to be really interesting. Montreal Washington's probably gone. And then you've got Marquez Callaway, who they brought in free agency. He's probably a likely candidate. And then it's going to be really a battle for the bottom spot between Johnson, Virgil, Humphrey, Grimes, Daniels, and all those other bottom tier guys. But I feel like those other top guys are pretty much set.
Okay, so I take it back. I have three questions because I got one that follows up on that one.
Sure.
So Brandon Johnson, Jalen Virgil, Kendall Hinton, all those were cut last year and then eventually brought back. Do we trust anything that happened last year with that coaching staff? Because even when we brought him back, you still didn't see a lot of Jalen Virgil. You didn't see a lot of Brandon Johnson. You saw Kendall Hinton at times, but are we going to see more of them this year, or is last year indicative of how they are as players, and we're still just not going to see them much, and they were overhyped?
I mean, I feel like they're going to get a fair chance to carve themselves out a role because we're still trying to find guys for this roster, established depth guys for this roster. So they'll be given a fair chance, but it all really depends on what they put out on tape, both in training camp and in the preseason. So I feel like everyone this season's going into the year with a clean slate. What they did last year or what they did previously in their career is all out the window. It's all what they have done this season for this regime for the Denver Broncos. So I feel like everyone's going to be going in on almost the same playing field, especially the more bottom roster guys, if you will.
Okay, so question 2/3. Russell Wilson, resurgence or more of the same?
I think resurgence, man. I mean, we saw flashes of that in the final 2 games of the year. He was used more in the QB run game. We saw him connecting on deep balls. We saw him, quite frankly, look a lot closer to the version of Russ that we thought we were going to get, especially in that Chargers game. So I feel like we're going to see a lot more that Russell Wilson than we did the Russell Wilson that we got under Nathaniel Hackett, because that was just a cesspool of incompetence, quite frankly.
Yeah,
But
putting it lightly.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I feel like we're going to see a lot closer to the Russell Wilson that we saw in the final 2 games of the season, and we can very much win football games with that version of Russell Wilson, with Sean Payton calling the plays.
So you talked about some of the players you thought might be vulnerable from the wide receiver position. What are some other well-known, established Broncos that you wouldn't be surprised if they didn't make the roster?
Let's see here. I was thinking Mike Purcell, but given our lack of depth on the defensive line, that one may probably stay. Alberto, because of he fell out of favor significantly with our prior coaching regime, and again, like I said earlier, clean slate. But at the same time, they made the moves to bring in Adam Troutman and Chris Manhertz. Alberto provides nothing in terms of blocking. He's just a pure receiving threat. And who knows, maybe Sean Payton covets something like that. But the fact that they brought in Adam Troutman may spell the end of Alberto Cuemanam here in Denver.
What about Dulcich?
Dulcich, I still feel like they really like Dulcich. He showed some flashes last year that he can be the tight end of the future here. I don't think Adam Troutman's going to be tight end 1. I don't think Chris Manhertz is obviously going to be tight end 1. He's more of a blocking tight end. So right now, I feel like they are relying on Greg Dulcich to be that tight end 1, but they wanted to bolster the unit behind him, which is why they brought in Chris Manhertz and Adam Troutman.
And we've talked about it before on the show, is that Peyton has not said anything positive about Dulcich. That's why that whole tight end room is such a mystery. They keep bringing in guys that are pretty well-known blockers. Troutman, doesn't have massive statistics, but you figure like Dulcich, highly drafted last year, like you said, showed some flashes, fan favorite. Speedy is almost like a wide receiver at the tight end position, and he's gotten like no accolades or anything from the new head coach.
I've missed that one. I have not heard his big since I haven't heard it, but I really missed the fact that he hasn't gotten praise. So who knows? Maybe they do anticipate guys like Adam Troutman and Chris Manhertz getting a more elevated role, but I don't know, man. I really like what I saw out of Greg Dulcich last year. And yeah. I mean, he's got the connection with Russell Wilson. He's got chemistry. So
The hair.
We'll see how that shakes out. The hair, man. I mean, come on. My hair's a mess right now, but the dude gives me a
Mine's all on my face. So it's fine.
Yeah.
So, we talked about some of the proven guys, and you mentioned how excited you were with Drew Sanders. Who is a player that you feel is flying under the radar that no one knows about, or should I say that's not even being talked about right now in this offseason and where we're at, that you feel is going to be maybe not like a household name, but like a name that like Broncos country will be plenty familiar with once the season is ending? And obviously I say that before training camp, before preseason, but like now that we're past the draft, who is that player, do you think, for you?
I'm going to go back to the defensive line. I really liked what I saw out of Matt Henningsen last year. 6th round draft pick, obviously prior regime, but we need a consistent piece at defensive end alongside Zach Allen. I mean, we got DJ Jones on the interior. We got Zach Allen on the interior, but right now our other starter list is Jonathan Harris. But I really like what Matt Henningsen showed last year, and I feel like he could become a steady piece on this Broncos defensive line. So that's one that really flies under the radar for me.
Okay. Yeah, he's a guy that really came on strong. I forget what he was voted. He was voted on, maybe it was the all rookie team or something. I forget what it was, but where he showed up on the all rookie team, he really showed up late. I honestly, it's gonna sound crazy because you mentioned him earlier, but I think it's the possibility of Drew Sanders. I think that Drew Sanders, despite of what it is, I think that he's going to be a guy that is really going to show out big time, this year. And he was that Josie insurance, but I also feel like drafting him and knowing with what you've drafted with Baron Browning, it affords you, especially with the comfortability of them moving Baron Browning, to the edge full time. This now can afford a guy like a Drew Sanders who has some limitations, but the same type of, what he's had before coming into the league and versatility, but like some limitations where he can perform pretty well inside. I think that he's going to offer a lot as far as a skill set goes within that linebacker room that a lot of fans are going to be really, really happy with what they see from him this year.
100%, man. I mean, at this point, I feel like he's got a really good chance to rival Josie Jewell for snaps. I really like what Drew Sanders can bring in, again, with his versatility. I mean, I'm not sure what his prospects are in terms of lining him up on the edge, but we're still trying to figure out rotational guys on the edge. So that could be a possibility as well with a guy like Drew Sanders. I'm not sure what his skill set and outlook would be there.
Juana says, odd tangent, but any thoughts on the Nigerian player following Coach Joseph that doesn't account against the 90 man? What?
So, oh, go ahead, Cameron.
No, go ahead. You're the guest.
You're the yeah, Cam, shut up.
Yeah, they brought him in through the NFL's international program. Hagai Debussy, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I don't know much about him, honestly, but the fact that he followed Vance Joseph here, that definitely could mean something. VJ likes him enough to bring him over here, and he could definitely compete for a role on this interior defensive line. We've got Yomo Wazarike, Matt Henningsen, who I talked about earlier. There's Jordan Jackson, Elijah Garcia, and Debussy. So it's going to be a bit of a competition for spots on the interior defensive line. And PJ Mustipher, the free agent out of Penn State, he's a guy who I feel like could be sort of a 2-down run clogger for us, man. I really like his size. He's not gonna offer much in pass rush, but he's definitely going to offer quite a bit in run defense. So that's an undrafted free agent that I'd keep an eye on to maybe make the team.
I did a double take when I was. What's that, Mike? I said I did a double take when I was reading that was with Penn State for 6 years. I'm like, this guy.
You're like, wait,
this guy's on the Tommy Boy program there. But so Mike had asked you about your favorite all-time player, but is there a current player that really is the one that you throw on their jersey or you pay the most attention to?
I mean, well, jersey-wise, I try not to get current players' jerseys for the most part unless you've really earned your stripes with the team. But, I mean, PS2 is probably my favorite player to watch on the team as of right now. And then, obviously, Pookie pre-injury as well. Those are kind of low-hanging fruit guys. But, obviously, PS2 is an absolute stud, and he's just so fun to watch on tape, man.
So I mentioned Jamal Williams is a guy that I was upset that the Broncos didn't get. Vividly. Like, is there a biggest miss for you this offseason for the Broncos? Somebody that you thought the Broncos should have brought in that they didn't?
It's actually, for me, a re-signing. I would have paid Draymond Jones rather than bring in Zach Allen. I don't feel like Zach Allen is going to be as impactful as Draymond Jones. That was, in my opinion, the biggest L for the Denver Broncos this offseason.
I feel like we're going to miss Deshaun Williams a lot, too.
Yeah, that's another one as well. Evero got him there in Carolina, man.
Well, and you do wonder with the lack or some of the offensive line depth, if not bringing back Graham Glasgow is going to end up biting him. So yeah, you do wonder.
That's one I actually really haven't really thought too much about because entering free agency, I was adamant in upgrading that position. And I was targeting someone like Ben Jones from the Titans, but obviously now it's come out that the Titans actually wanted him to retire because of his concussion issues. So that's an option that's kind of off the table for me. And then obviously in the draft, we couldn't land someone like John Michael Schmitz, which was really unfortunate. So now, I mean, we're entering the season with Lloyd Cushenberry is probably our starting center, and that's the position for me that sticks out like a sore thumb as our biggest position of need right now is center. So I guess that's also another big L for the Denver Broncos as well, as failure to address the center position. And yeah, Graham Glasgow, he wasn't perfect by any means, but he brought us competent center play, which is something we haven't had in a while.
Yeah.
What kind of moves do you think the Broncos still have going? Any trades that you would predict?
Trades. I mean, at this point, I feel like shipping one of our wide receivers out is probably off the board. They still may want to address the center position, but I'm not quite sure who's available yet. Maybe they could look for some depth at tackle as well. But I'm not sure as of trades as of right now, but I do know that there are still some holes that the team needs to address moving forward. And who knows, maybe they could make a trade for one of the big name running backs like Dalvin Cook. I mean, that's with the connection with George Payton, that's obviously something that I wouldn't completely throw out the window either.
What would you offer a Dalvin Cook?
4th rounder, probably. That seems like fair compensation.
Yeah.
I mean, running back, the value, it's just the value of the position, man. Mm-hmm. I don't think running back's going to get much more than a 4th rounder, especially one that's, I'm not sure, Dalvin Cook's got to be pushing at least 29, 30 by now, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think
he's younger than that, actually, but I'll double check while you're talking, Cam. Sorry.
What I was going to say too is like it may actually even be to the point where teams, and I don't mean this like from a solely from a Broncos perspective, but I also wonder if teams are just forcing the Vikings to kind of call their bluff a little bit and, you know, release Dalvin Cook. Because like the thing is too is like you also get to the point of like training camp and you get cap casualties, like, you know, with in fact that training camp and with come preseason. So it's possible that like teams are like forcing the Vikings to truly make it that tough decision of, all right, it's time to move on from Dalvin. And so, and if that's kind of maybe what the Broncos are kind of leaning toward and hedging their bet on, then it's a shrewd move. But like, that's, you know, it's one that like, I can definitely see it, but I think it's between probably running back and maybe another center, you know, or maybe even a tackle, for that matter. Mm-hmm. I don't know if Cameron Fleming is signed, but I mean that's one.
I believe he is.
You know, but that's one that I would love back. You know, and certainly bring him back. But I still kind of see another running back, kind of like, you know, within the wings here. So maybe it's Kareem, maybe it's Leonard Fournette. You know, that's another name that's certainly out there. But yeah,
that would intrigue me.
Dalvin will be 28 in August, and Fournette feels like he's been around a long time, but he's not.
Fournette's like 47.
I don't. He's still in his 20s too. You know.
Yeah.
Well, and I think like we sit here and we talk about players that were missed in the offseason. Who was the left tackle that was on the Chiefs?
Orlando Brown.
Yeah, Orlando Brown. Would he have been a good option maybe instead of holy crap.
McGlinchey?
No, left tackle.
Garrett Bowles?
Oh, yeah, Garrett Bowles. Would he have been a better option than Garrett Bowles?
Probably not for the money. I don't think there's much of a talent gap between the two players.
Okay. Because it's like it's hard to figure out which Bowles we're gonna get, right? Like he had all those problems starting out and then he got better under Munchak, and then Munchak left, and then we all heard about Butch Berry. Butch Berry was awful. So was it a Butch Berry problem or was it a Garrett Bowles problem? You know, like it seems like we keep going back and forth.
Well, I not to, but it feels like it's a pretty well documented about, you know, where this team was with Butch Berry. So I'll let
hearing this at training camp.
I'll let Gage take it. Yeah, it's all Butch Berry for me. Go ahead, Gage.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Butch Berry, I was hearing rumblings about him at training camp not being liked amongst the locker room, yelling at players, reaming players, living sticky notes in the locker room, criticizing player performance instead of actually approaching the player face to face. So at this point in time, I'm going to lean towards it being a Butch Berry problem because under Mike Munchak, Garrett Bowles each season really took that upward trajectory in his game. I mean, 2021 was a little bit disappointing relative to his 2020 season, but still, man, after Mike Munchak departed and Butch Berry came in, you saw that significant dive in performance, and then he suffered the injury. So as of right now, I'm going to lean into it being a Butch Berry problem, and that fact that we've got a former player in the building in Zach Strief as the offensive line coach, someone who really could relate to Garrett Bowles on that aspect of things. And if I'm not mistaken, Zach Strief is also somebody who kind of struggled early in his career and then figured it out later on. So there's a bit of a similarity in career trajectory with Garrett Bowles. So perhaps having someone like that in the building will be able to get the Garrett Bowles that was closer to the 2020 version of him that made the Pro Bowl.
Boy, when when Butch Berry was mad, he'd write in all caps and put it in your locker.
He'd use more than one sticky note. When an interim head coach is with 2 games left is firing assistant coaches, you know that they're train wrecks. Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. It was because it was Butch Berry and it was Dwayne Stukes. Dwayne Stukes was the one that, you were a little like, okay, was it the special teams or was it Dwayne
Injuries,
Stukes? Like that. Yeah. But yeah, Butch Berry, man, like everything that, that's one that, and the thing that's just unfortunate is then the Miami Dolphins go out and hire Butch Berry. And so it's, maybe he turns it around, but it's one that he's clearly going to a familiar situation of the 49er ties and everything. But he was a guy that if you look at his snapshot, he just looks like a vampire. Like he's just scary to look at.
He does. He really does, man. He looks like someone who'll suck your blood out.
Wait, which kind of vampire though? Are we talking like the Twilight vampires, or are we talking like
Count Chocula?
Yeah, like what kind of vampire are we talking about here?
Like a true Dracula.
Like not the Twilight vampire. Yeah.
Yeah.
He reminds me of Gollum from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Count Chocula. What?
Oh, that's great.
Well, on that wonderful note, it's been a good show, Gage. We appreciate you joining us. And again, you can find him on Denver Broncos Syndicate, which goes on YouTube. Do you do Facebook as well, or just YouTube with Denver Broncos Syndicate?
Just YouTube as of right now.
Just YouTube, and then you can find him on Twitter at Gage Madrid NFL. It has been an absolute blast having you on the show. Absolutely loved it. If you want to hang out for a second, we'll go ahead and close this out, and then we'll chat in the background. Make sure you. Now I forgot where I was going. Oh, make sure you tune into all the other shows that are on the network. We got shows Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the neighborhood whenever we damn well feel like it. So make sure you tune into that whenever that goes live. It's a whole lot of fun. And we also have starting to push the merch store, the swag shop that we've got going on right now. It's all in the description. We've got that out on Twitter as well. Make sure you go check that out. We'll see you guys later. Love every single one of y'all. Peace.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, go.